Greetings to all you folks out there in YouTube land, and welcome to this new channel on YouTube, Think for a Change. And I want to begin, this is the first video in a series of videos that we'll be doing on thinking itself, on mind itself. So we will be exploring thinking, the process of thinking, how we think, how our beliefs are formed, knowledge, all these various aspects of our mental functioning that relate to this whole process of thinking and feeling. And we will be relating this process to life itself, to being itself, and to the most fundamental aspect of mind, which is consciousness or awareness. And let me begin by, I'm going to talk a little bit about the purpose, say, of what I'm doing here, or what we're doing. You join with me, of course. We will be joining in a common purpose. At this time, as you may have noticed, we're in a really critical era in human history. We have entered a time of unprecedented change and instability, one could say. And there are many, many things going on in many different ways that are not positive, and there are some good positive things as well. So one of the things I am hoping to do, and there are many people who are attempting to do, what we will be doing here on this channel, is we're attempting to get each other to really take a look at our own minds, to how we think, to what we value, to what is operating in our minds and hearts, what drives our behavior and our thinking. And so now we're also coming to the arena of feeling, of emotions. Now, I don't separate feeling and emotions from thinking, from that whole process of being aware, because it's all one process. Our feelings, our emotions are both shaped and directed by our thinking, our beliefs, our judgments, and the other way around. The feelings and the emotions that we experience, especially the ones that predominate, are what drive our thinking processes and drive our, let's say, our decision making, affect our perception and drive our perception. And they, of course, affect our relationships as well, our relations with each other. And life is basically relationship. So what we want to do here, then let me just say as well, that I'm coming always, that what I'm saying, what I'm doing here, is based on that spiritual dimension in which we all live and move and have our being. And everything that we are and that we do actually arises ultimately from that dimension, whether we are aware of it or not. So I'm coming from that perspective, what I call the spiritual perspective, and I will be relating what we do and how we do it, everything to that dimension, that aspect of our being. Some call it your soul, some call it your essence, your spiritual essence. It's also called the self with a capital S. It's called the Christ, from those of us that work with the mystical traditions of the West, such as Christianity. Could be called the ground of being, or your Buddha nature, your whole mind, your true mind, even enlightened mind. This fundamental dimension of our being in which we live, and from which and in which our mind arises, has been called by many names by the different traditions, but we are all referring to the same thing. And that is another point that I will be making in this series of videos. What I'm trying to do, or one of the things I'm trying to do, is to try to help bring us together more, help us to recognize our commonality, what we share, the common elements in our lives, instead of focusing on all the differences Again, this is a time of unprecedented, at least in my life, unprecedented division and polarity in all kinds of ways, in the political scene, in the social scene, even religious, spiritual realms. There's an awful lot of separation and division and conflict and discord going on at this time in various human societies. So one of the things that some of us are attempting to do, and that includes me, is we want to try and bring us together based on our commonality. And so we have to start with very, very, very basic things. Of course, the fact that we are all children of the one creator, of the one creative source. And the fact that we all share this spiritual dimension as the most fundamental dimension of our being. Our mind arises from that. And our human mind actually is shining by the light of that higher mind. The human mind is kind of like, we could say it's a projection, or it's some ways it's a kind of it is a separation from the wholeness of our higher mind. And in that sense of separation from the spiritual perspective, that's where a lot of our problems begin. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. And while I'm at it here, I want to make a point here as well. It is not my purpose, it is not my aim or my goal to persuade or to convince or talk anybody into anything. We all have free will given us in our creation, and we have the right responsibility to make our own decisions, to decide upon how we want to live and what we want to believe. And we will experience the consequences of what we believe and what we think and of our actions. But everybody has the right to follow that path, to follow their own process of growing and learning. So it's not my goal to, as I said, to convince or persuade people, but it is my hope, it is my aim perhaps to stimulate all the listeners who join with me in these videos to begin to examine their thinking processes, their mind, their feeling, to begin to examine their life seriously. Okay, but just getting back down to the basics, all the human problems we face have one origin, one beginning. They start in the human mind, with our thinkings, our beliefs, our judgments, what we value as good and bad. And then, of course, the feeling, the emotions we have associated with that. So all our problems, everything that is going on out there, begins in each and every mind. And when it gets magnified to the level of hundreds, thousands, millions, billions of people, then what you have are these mass forces, these very great forces, these movements that take place on a much larger scale. And yet again, the origin of everything in our lives and experience. All these forces, the negative forces as well as the positive forces, all of these things have their beginning in the human mind, in each and every mind. And here I'd like to throw in a sort of a paraphrase of a quote by a famous Russian writer of the 20th century, Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He said, "The difference between good and evil," he said, "does not run along the border between political ideologies or nations or religions. The separation between good and evil runs right down the center of every human heart, of all human hearts. And that makes each of us, again, responsible for how we live our lives, how we think, how we treat others." And so that's what we will be talking about. These are sort of the subjects and many of the themes that we are going to be going into right now. Now, while I'm talking about the great forces, I just want to add another point here. Now, when you look around, at the world around you, there's almost 7 billion of us here right now. There are tremendous forces. There's a huge number of us, and the world we see is the consequence. It's the result of the thoughts and actions and feelings and judgments of a great many people. So let's say I take a look at that as an individual, and I think, well, what can I do? What can I do to help solve some of these problems, help relieve some of this tension, help bring more love, more positive energy into life today, into situations, into whether it's the life of our nation, the life of your local area, your town, or internationally. What can I do? And it's true. As one individual, what I'm doing is not, in and by itself, is not going to change the course of history. However, as I was saying just a moment ago, all the problems in human life start in our human minds, in our thinking, feeling, how we think and feel, what we believe, and how we see each other. And from that perspective, each of us, by going right to the foundation of where all the problems start, we can be part of the solution. We can commit to being part of the solution, to becoming positive forces in our lives, in our neighborhood, in our relationships, in our regional area, for good, for love, for we can learn to act from understanding, from tolerance, from recognition that we all share the same life, and we share the same responsibilities, and we share the same basic humanity. We all suffer and we all feel joy. So very fundamentally, all of us human beings, no matter what nation, what color, even no matter what era, there is a commonality there. And from that commonality, we live, even as it kind of breaks itself off into many little directions. So if you go right back to your human mind and to your feelings and your thoughts, right there, where both the good and the not so good start, right there, by changing your mind, by learning to understand your own thinking, your own feeling, by seeing the movement of fear, anger, judgment, and all that, all the negative forces, all the things that limit us and hurt us, seeing the action of that in your mind, seeing the movement of that, and deciding differently, and also seeing the positive movement in your life, the love and the kindness and the tolerance, and then working. What we do is we work with our minds by becoming very aware, very self-aware of how we are, of how we act, of how we do all the things we do. And by bringing that for each of us who want to become part of the solution at this critical time, the place to begin is where the problem begins and where the solution begins, in each and every mind and heart. That is where we start. Well, I've kind of been all over the place here. I've covered a lot of areas, but I think I'm going to stop for now. And in the next video, we will perhaps zero in to very particular aspects of what I have talked about today. So thank you so much for listening, and God bless you. God bless us, each and every one, and I hope to see you again.